You ever hear a line that just stops you cold? A line that cuts through all the noise, all the political spin, and forces you to really think about what's going on? That's exactly what happened when Kash Patel looked across the room at Senator Cory Booker and said without hesitation, "Trump will cut you loose." Now I want you to let that sink in for a second. Those 5 words weren't just an insult. They weren't just a jab in the middle of a heated exchange. They were a warning, a prophecy, and in some ways, a confession about how Trump's world really works. When I first watched this clash unfold, I'll be honest with you, I felt like I was watching more than just 2 politicians going at it. I felt like I was seeing a glimpse into the DNA of Trump's political machine, the way loyalty is demanded, the way fear is weaponized, and the way power is dangled like a prize for those who stay in line. Patel wasn't just talking to Booker. He was talking to everyone who's ever questioned Trump, everyone who's ever wondered if sticking by him was worth it. Now let's be real, Booker's no stranger to fights like this. The man's been around long enough to know when somebody's trying to corner him with a threat disguised as a statement. And you could see it in his face, in the way he shifted in his chair, that Patel's words hit him. But here's the thing, Booker didn't shrink. He didn't back down. He knew exactly what Patel was really saying. In Trump's world, loyalty is everything. Until it isn't. Think about the history here. How many people have been in Trump's inner circle, only to be tossed aside when they no longer served his purpose? We're talking about a pattern that stretches across his business, his presidency, even his post-presidency life. Allies who defended him tooth and nail, people who put their reputations, even their freedom on the line, were suddenly enemies the moment they stepped out of line. That's the reality Patel was putting into words, maybe without even realizing just how much truth he was revealing. And you know what makes that line so powerful? It's not just that it came from Patel, one of Trump's fiercest loyalists. It's that it came out like a reflex, like something so obvious it didn't even need explaining. Trump will cut you loose. Boom. No hesitation, no filter. He didn't say maybe. He didn't say if you betray him. He said it like it was inevitable, like it was a fact of life. And honestly, that's what makes it chilling. Now, I want you to imagine being in that room when those words dropped. Reporters scrambling to write it down, cameras zooming in, Booker locking eyes with Patel like he'd just been handed a golden opportunity. Because Booker, he knew right away, this wasn't just a threat. This was proof. Proof of everything he's been warning about when it comes to Trump's leadership. Proof that loyalty in that world isn't about principle, it's about survival. And if you're not useful anymore, you're gone. This is where the clash starts to become more than just a shouting match. This is where it becomes symbolic. Patel, the soldier defending Trump's throne, willing to say out loud what others only whisper. And Booker, the challenger, ready to expose the cracks in that loyalty game. The energy in that room was electric, and it's the kind of moment that doesn't just disappear when the camera is shut off. It echoes, it trends, it sparks conversations like the one we're having right now. Here's what struck me most about Patel in that moment. He wasn't just throwing out a clever line to score points. He meant it. You could see it in his eyes, hear it in the way his voice cut through the noise. Trump will cut you loose. That wasn't a guess, it wasn't a hypothetical. That was Kash Patel laying down the law of the land as he sees it. Loyalty to Trump is non-negotiable, and if you can't live with that, you're finished. And let's be real, Patel has lived by that code for years. He's been in Trump's corner through scandals, impeachments, investigations, and chaos that would have sunk any other politician. He's one of the few who never wavered, never second-guessed his allegiance. That's why Trump trusts him, why Patel has become a kind of symbol of unwavering loyalty. So when he says those words, it doesn't sound like speculation. It sounds like testimony, like he's giving us a glimpse of the conversations that happen behind closed doors, where loyalty is the only currency that matters. But here's where it gets interesting. That very same statement, meant to intimidate, actually exposes the weakness of Trump's whole system. Think about it. If everyone around you is constantly worried about being cut loose, if every ally knows deep down that their usefulness has an expiration date, then what kind of loyalty is that really? It's not trust. It's fear. It's survival. And fear-based loyalty doesn't last. It cracks the moment things get tough, the moment people realize they have more to lose than to gain. And Booker, to his credit, saw that crack immediately. You could almost see the gears turning in his head. Patel had just given him a weapon, and Booker wasn't about to let it go unused. He leaned in, calm but deliberate, and started pressing the point. If Trump cuts people loose so easily, Booker essentially argued, then what does that say about his leadership? What does that say about the movement you've tied yourself to? It was like watching someone take a blade handed to them by their opponent and turning it right back around. Booker didn't just challenge Patel. He listed the names, the faces, the real-world examples of people who had lived through the very thing Patel was warning about. Michael Cohen, once Trump's fixer, now one of his harshest critics. John Bolton, praised one day, demonized the next. Cabinet officials, campaign managers, press secretaries, you name it. One by one, Booker reminded Patel they were lifted up and then cast aside. Trump didn't hesitate to cut them loose, and history shows he never will. That's when you could feel the tension rise. Patel's jaw tightened, his voice rose. He wasn't about to let Booker frame Trump as a user who discards people. No, Patel flipped it. He said those people weren't loyal enough, that they betrayed Trump first. That it wasn't Trump doing the cutting, it was them doing the leaving. And that's the brilliance of Patel's defense. It shifts all the blame. In his world, Trump never fails his allies. His allies fail him. Now imagine being an average American watching this unfold live. On one side, you've got Patel, fiery, unwavering, almost fanatical in his loyalty. On the other, Booker, calm but relentless, poking holes in the very foundation of Patel's argument. It was like watching two heavyweights in the ring, each landing blows, neither backing down. And for the viewers at home, it wasn't just entertaining, it was revealing. Because whether you loved Trump or hated him, you couldn't deny the truth hidden in Patel's words. That's the power of a moment like this. It forces people to think about what loyalty really means. Is it about standing by someone no matter what, even when they're wrong? Or is it about standing by principles that don't change with the mood of one man? Patel says loyalty to Trump is strength. Booker says it's weakness disguised as strength. And in that clash of ideas, we're left with a question that America still hasn't answered. What kind of loyalty do we actually value? And trust me, this isn't just some theoretical debate. The ripple effect was immediate. Clips of Patel's warning and Booker's pushback started circulating online within minutes. People were arguing about it on Twitter, turning it into memes, debating it on cable news panels. And suddenly, what started as a heated moment in a hearing room became a national conversation. Not just about Trump, not just about Patel or Booker, but about the nature of loyalty in politics itself. And as big as that clash was, as viral as it went, things were about to get even heavier. Because lurking in the background of this whole exchange was something far darker than politics. A real tragedy. A murder in Utah that had shocked the nation. And when that story collided with this confrontation, the debate over loyalty turned into something much deeper. Something that touched on justice, morality, and the very soul of the country. Now here's where things started to boil over. Booker wasn't just going to sit there and let Patel dominate the conversation with threats disguised as wisdom. He leaned forward, his voice steadier now, sharper, more deliberate. And he said something that cut right through the noise. You're not proving Trump's strength with that line, Kash. You're proving his weakness. Think about that for a second. Patel thought he was flexing, reminding everyone that Trump doesn't hesitate to drop people who don't measure up. But what Booker did was flip the narrative on its head. He reframed it as insecurity. He made the case that a true leader doesn't need to constantly threaten loyalty tests. A true leader inspires loyalty by earning it, not by demanding it. And you could feel the shift in the room. Suddenly, this wasn't just a back-and-forth spat. This was a philosophical clash about what leadership really is. Booker started listing examples of leaders throughout history who inspired loyalty through vision, courage, and shared purpose, not fear. From Lincoln to Mandela, from FDR to Martin Luther King Jr., he painted a picture of leadership that uplifts rather than controls. And in doing so, he made Patel's defense of Trump look small, petty, and rooted in fear. But Patel wasn't about to let that stand. He fired back hard, saying that Trump has done more to inspire loyalty than any president in modern history. That his movement isn't about fear, it's about love. Love for the country. Love for freedom. Love for the man who gave a voice to millions who felt ignored. Patel pointed to the rallies, the chants, the unwavering support through 2 impeachments and endless investigations. He painted it as proof that Trump's leadership is the real thing, not weakness. This is where it got fiery. Booker practically laughed at the idea that loyalty born out of rallies and chants equals genuine leadership. He pointed out how quickly Trump's so-called loyalists have turned on him when their own survival was at stake. Think about January 6th, when some of Trump's closest allies distanced themselves within hours of the chaos, or the long list of former insiders who now openly criticize him. Booker reminded Patel and everyone listening that love that's forced isn't love at all. It's control dressed up as devotion, and the crowd watching at home? They were hooked. Social media lit up with clips of Booker saying, "Loyalty based on fear is just slavery with better branding." That line went viral instantly. People were quoting it, arguing about it, using it as ammo for their side of the political fight. Meanwhile, Patel's defenders doubled down, saying Booker was twisting words, ignoring the millions who still stand shoulder to shoulder with Trump because they believe in his vision. But here's the thing, and this is where the conversation got even heavier. Booker wasn't just talking about loyalty to Trump, he was connecting it to something bigger. He started weaving in the story of the Utah murder, reminding the room that blind loyalty doesn't just play out in politics, it plays out in real lives, with real consequences. He painted a vivid picture, a community torn apart, a life lost, and a movement where some followers become so consumed by loyalty to a leader that they lose sight of morality altogether. Booker argued that when loyalty to one man outweighs loyalty to truth, justice, or humanity, the results can be catastrophic. And in that moment, you could see Patel's face tighten, because this wasn't just politics anymore. This was about morality. Patel tried to brush it off, insisting that Trump's movement had nothing to do with the tragedy in Utah. He argued that it was wrong to tie an individual act of violence to an entire political movement. But Booker wouldn't let it go. He kept pressing the point, saying that rhetoric has consequences, that words, threats, and demands for blind loyalty can light fires that burn far beyond the walls of political rallies. And this is what made that exchange so powerful. It wasn't just two men arguing about Trump. It was a raw confrontation about the nature of leadership, the dangers of unchecked loyalty, and the real-world consequences that ripple out when people put devotion to one man above devotion to the truth. By this point, the clash had become must-watch TV. You didn't even have to care about politics to feel the weight of what was happening. It was human. It was emotional. It was about fear, loyalty, betrayal, and the cost of putting power above principle. And as the two men locked eyes, the tension in the room felt like it could snap at any second. But what came next? That was when the debate moved from fiery words to a deeper, almost chilling silence. Because after all the shouting, all the finger-pointing, both men knew the real question wasn't about Trump or loyalty at all. It was about America's soul, and whether we as a people are willing to be cut loose ourselves. By the time the Utah murder came into focus, the tone of the confrontation had shifted. It wasn't just about Trump anymore. It wasn't just about who had the better one-liner or who could score points on national TV. No, this was about the cost of blind loyalty when it spills out of the political arena and into the real world. Booker leaned into this point hard. He didn't flinch. He looked Patel square in the eye and said something that cut through the noise like a blade. You think loyalty to Trump is strength. But what happens when that loyalty leads to tragedy? And right there, the Utah murder was no longer just a headline. It became a symbol. Because here's the truth. Politics doesn't happen in a vacuum. The words leaders use, the way they demand loyalty, the way they frame dissent as betrayal, it doesn't just stay in Washington or on cable news. It trickles down. It seeps into communities. It takes root in the hearts of people who believe they're fighting for something bigger than themselves. And sometimes, tragically, it explodes in ways no one can take back. Booker laid it out plainly. He said when people are told over and over that loyalty to one man equals loyalty to their country, then they'll justify almost anything in his name. They'll excuse corruption. They'll excuse cruelty. And in the worst cases, they'll excuse violence. That's the danger, Booker argued. The danger of putting loyalty to Trump above loyalty to truth, justice, or humanity itself. Patel wasn't having it. He came back hard, saying Booker was exploiting a tragedy for political gain, that it was disgusting to connect one man's crime to a movement of millions. He pointed out that people commit acts of violence for all kinds of reasons, and to pin it on Trump was unfair and dishonest. He accused Booker of smearing ordinary Americans who love their country just because they also happen to love Trump. But here's what Booker did next. It was subtle, but it was devastating. He didn't argue the details of the Utah case. He didn't try to lay the blame squarely on Trump's shoulders. Instead, he zoomed out. He made it about patterns, about culture, about the way constant rhetoric of division, loyalty tests, and us versus them thinking creates an atmosphere where violence feels justified. And that's what made his argument so powerful. Because even if you didn't agree with every word Booker said, you couldn't deny the truth in it. We've all seen it. We've seen how words can escalate. How politicians stoke flames and then act shocked when fire breaks out. How loyalty to a leader can become so blinding that morality gets pushed aside. Booker's point was simple. When leaders demand unconditional loyalty, someone always pays the price. And too often, it's innocent people. Now imagine Patel sitting there, hearing all this. You could see it in his face. He wasn't just angry, he was rattled. Because Booker had shifted the fight. It wasn't about Trump's strength anymore. It wasn't about whether Trump cuts people loose. It was about the real human cost of that kind of politics. And that's not a ground Patel wanted to fight on. But still, Patel doubled down. He insisted that Trump's loyalty test is no different than any other leader's expectations. That every movement requires commitment, discipline, and unity. He argued that people like Booker were the real danger because they weakened the country by constantly dividing it, by painting Trump supporters as extremists. Patel's voice rose as he spoke, fiery, almost desperate to reclaim the ground he felt slipping beneath him. And for a moment, you could feel the raw emotion. Because this wasn't just politics to Patel. This was personal. His loyalty to Trump isn't an act, it's who he is. He staked his reputation, his career, maybe even his future on it. So when Booker connected blind loyalty to tragedy, Patel wasn't just defending Trump, he was defending himself. The room got heavy. Reporters weren't scribbling notes anymore. They were just staring. You could almost feel the silence between sentences, the weight of what was being said. Because this was bigger than Patel, bigger than Booker, bigger than Trump. It was about America itself, about whether our loyalty is to people or to principles, and in that silence, you could sense the audience, those watching on TV, those scrolling on their phones, starting to wrestle with the same question. Is loyalty a strength? Or is it a trap? Does it bind us together? Or does it blind us to the truth? That's when Booker dropped one of the most haunting lines of the night. The question isn't whether Trump will cut you loose. The question is whether we, the American people, are willing to cut ourselves loose from him before it's too late. And right there, the whole clash crystallized into something unforgettable. Patel's threat, Booker's pushback, the tragedy in Utah, all of it boiled down to a single moment of clarity. A choice, a warning, a test of what kind of nation we really want to be. By the final stretch, the air was thick with tension. Patel and Booker had gone toe-to-toe on loyalty, leadership, and even tragedy. But now, both of them knew it was time to leave a lasting mark. They weren't just arguing anymore. They were battling for the final word, the clip that would live on, the line that would trend. Patel was the first to make his stand. He leaned in, his voice steady but burning with emotion. You can say whatever you want about Trump, but here's the truth, he declared. He doesn't cut people loose for nothing. He cuts people loose when they betray the movement, when they betray America. That's not weakness, that's strength. It was vintage Patel, loyal to the core, defiant, unflinching. He wanted to remind everyone that in his world, Trump isn't a tyrant discarding allies. He's a commander weeding out the weak. It was a message meant for Trump supporters watching at home, a reassurance that their loyalty wasn't misplaced, that their devotion meant something real. But Booker wasn't about to let Patel's framing stand. He sat back, paused, and then delivered the kind of closing that stops you in your tracks. Strength isn't about cutting people loose, he said slowly, deliberately. Strength is about lifting people up even when they fall short. Weakness is when your loyalty only lasts as long as someone's usefulness. And if that's the kind of loyalty Trump demands, then it's not loyalty at all, it's fear. Boom. That was the gut punch. The moment the entire clash had been building toward, Booker didn't just challenge Patel's words, he redefined them. He made the case that true loyalty isn't blind. It isn't conditional. And it certainly isn't about one man. True loyalty, he said, is about loyalty to the truth, to justice, to the people you serve, not the power you crave. And here's what made it unforgettable. He tied it right back to Patel's original line. Trump will cut you loose. Those words, meant as a threat, became the perfect closing argument for Booker. He showed that in Trump's world, loyalty is temporary, fragile, and transactional. And then he flipped the mirror back on America. Do we want to live in that kind of world? Or do we want something better? The room fell silent. Even Patel, fiery as he was, didn't have much left to throw. He shook his head, muttered about Booker twisting the truth, but the energy had shifted. Booker had landed the final blow, and everyone in that room knew it. For those watching at home, the message was clear. This wasn't just about Trump. It wasn't just about Patel or Booker. It was about all of us. About what kind of loyalty we reward, what kind of leaders we follow, and what kind of future we want to build. Because in the end, Patel was right about one thing. Trump will cut you loose. He always has, he always will. The only question is whether America will let itself be cut loose from the values that matter most. And that's why this clash matters. Not because it was fiery, not because it was viral, not because it gave us 100 memes and headlines. It matters because it forced us to look in the mirror, to ask ourselves who we are and who we want to be. Are we a nation bound by loyalty to one man? Or are we a nation bound by loyalty to something greater, truth, justice, and the promise of a better tomorrow? That's the choice Patel and Booker laid bare in that room. And whether we realize it or not, it's the same choice staring America in the face right now. So when you hear those words, Trump will cut you loose, don't just think about Patel, or Booker, or even Trump. Think about yourself. Think about your community. Think about your country. Because at the end of the day, loyalty isn't about who you stand behind, it's about what you stand for. And that's the real confrontation. Not between Patel and Booker. Not between Republicans and Democrats, but between fear and courage, control and freedom, loyalty to one man and loyalty to what's right. Which side are you on?